Welcome to the Own Your Genius podcast, where we discuss building businesses, growing brands, and owning our genius. Hey, I'm your host, brand attorney LaConya Murray. Today's question is, when do you know it's time to rebrand? I think that's very fitting. Like, if you turned in today expecting a legal tea, I need you to stick with me. I promise you I can explain. Let me start by saying that, first and foremost, the legal tea is still a part of the podcast. It's just not the whole part. Because I love it. I love discussing pop culture from a legal view, and you guys love it too, so it's not going anywhere. But the shift was necessary because, listen, as much as I love discussing trademarks and copyrights, I love talking about business just as much. And that was pretty evident a few weeks ago. So let me tell you, a couple of weeks ago during election time here in Alabama, I have a friend that's running for judge, or was running for judge, and she asked me to volunteer to work the polling stations. And I said, yes, of course. And then I get there, right? And it is pouring down rain like a monsoon. It just took over Alabama where I was. But let me tell you, out there in that pouring rain, I was having a full-blown conversation with someone about business systems and branding. And I excused myself from the conversation so the other person could get out the rain. And what I said was something that I find myself saying all the time, which was, let me let you go because I can talk about this all day long. So I was like, if I can talk about this all day long, if I'm that passionate about it, I need to incorporate it into my business and into what I'm teaching you all. So the shift was necessary because discussing intellectual property without discussing the business and branding part really does a disservice to business owners who are trying to figure out where IP fits into their business. I totally believe in operating your realm of genius. Therefore, in addition to my lovely voice, you will also hear from different subject matter experts as relates to building your business and growing your brand. And let's talk about genius for a minute, because speaking of genius, let's discuss this new name, Own Your Genius. So what is genius anyway? Here, genius has several meanings. Genius refers to intellectual property, property of the mind. It also refers to your education and experience. And it also refers to your quirks, your personality, the stuff that makes you you, the things that makes you unique. To be successful in business, you're going to have to own who you are, what you know, and what you create. You're going to have to do what? Own your genius. And that's how we came up with the name Own Your Genius for the podcast. Now, I'm going to tell you that the decision to rebrand, it wasn't easy, but ultimately I decided it was necessary for the direction that my business is growing, which brings me to today's question. When do you know it's time to rebrand? Today we're going to talk about three ways you know that it's time to rebrand. And so the first way you know that it's time to rebrand is when your market or audience changes. You're going to have to rebrand to connect with them. So when we talk about branding, let me just make this point right here. When we talk about branding is both inside and out. So most people think about branding, they think about the outside of branding, which is the logos, the trade names, colors, things of that nature. But we also here are talking about the inside. So inside, mission, values, and what your company stands for. And sometimes it's necessary to expand or change your values and missions to connect with your new audience, or just to make more clear where you stand in what you stand for. But when it comes to rebranding on the outside, you want to make sure that if you're going to change your market, and if you're going to change your audience, you want to make sure that your new brand actually speaks to this new people that you're looking to connect with. Because branding should be intentional. Branding has to be intentional. Like, you can't just go and hire someone to do a logo for you without knowing how that logo is going to connect with who you're looking to work with. It's more than just a logo, more than just a name. You cannot just have random names and logos. You have to be intentional. So number one, when your market or audience changes, you need to reevaluate your brand and see if it still connects with that new audience. The second way you know that it's time to rebrand is that when your brand doesn't stand out in the market. When you look around, and when I'm saying this, I'm thinking about Madagascar. don't judge me. So in Madagascar, I think it's the second one when they go to Africa. And it's a kid. If you haven't seen Madagascar, you probably don't have children. It's a children's movie that came out years ago, but we still watch it because it's still good, right? But anyway, they end up in Africa, and when they get there, Marty, who is a zebra, he finds other zebras like them. Mind you, they're from New York. They went in the zoo, they escaped, they ended up in Africa. Okay, long story short. And he gets there, and there are all these other zebras, right? So all this time he was thinking that he was unique. And then he gets to Africa and he finds out that there are others out there like him, and the things and the tricks that he would do, they can do them too. And then when his best friend fails to recognize him in the crowd, he's feeling all in despair, right? All upset and sad about it. So the same thing with your brand. If you started your business and you jumped up and you created your branding based off what was popular, based off of something that's common, and when you go and look around, or maybe you do a quick Google search, you notice that when you try to find you, like several different businesses pop up, or several different people are using pages on that social media, and that you're really not as unique as you thought you were, then it's time to rebrand. Sometimes it happens after you've already launched. I've had people who come to me for trademark clearance searches and to file trademark applications. And when we do the trademark clearance search, I had to have a conversation with them and say, hey, this name is just not unique enough. It's already something out there that's same or similar. And now they're forced to rebrand. And if you catch it in the beginning phases, that's great. It's not really rebranding, it's branding. But for a lot of people, they have already committed. They're already out there. They already have their marketing done. They already committed to the logos. They have their websites been built. And so for them, it is going to be a rebrand. So the second way you know that it's time to rebrand is if you look out into the market and you find out that your mark is saturated, or if you need to rebrand because you need to avoid infringement. Basically, you want to differentiate yourself from your competitors. That's the second reason that you will need to rebrand. The third reason you're going to need to rebrand is if your audience hasn't changed, but maybe you started your business with a logo and a dream. Or maybe your audience hasn't changed, but you are trying to differentiate yourself from what you used to stand for. And we kind of talked about this in the first reason you need to rebrand, but in that case you actually were going into a different market. Sometimes your audience and market doesn't change, but you need to do something in order to change how you're connecting with your current audience, because again, you just started your business with a logo and a dream, because for some reason when people start businesses, the first thing they want to do is go out and get a logo. I've had people say, hey, I can't start my business. I can't sell products because I don't have my logo. My logo's not finished. Please stop that. Your logo, before you even have a logo, people are going to connect with your products and your services and how you do business. So you don't have to have a logo to do business. That's first of all. I just got sidetracked. My whole point of this was that when you just do and just have someone create a logo for you without actually sitting down and doing the work, the brand work that comes with building a brand or building a business and growing a brand, which means identifying who your ideal client is, defining your avatar, knowing what connects with them, what speaks to them, what their pain points are, and what you can create brand wise to connect with them and draw them in, then sometimes we just hastily throw something together. And it really doesn't connect. And I'll be honest, when I started Off the Mark years ago, my first logo was like that. I just got something, But as I grew in business and as I began to understand my audience more, I changed that logo. And even now with the personal brand, again, I dove deeper into my intended audience in my market, and that look is really connecting with who I wanted to connect with. But if I hadn't done the work, it wouldn't have. So maybe your audience hasn't changed, but you need to connect with your current audience in a way that you haven't been connecting with them before. And the example of this, and I'm going to spill a little legal tea in this, right? Here's the legal tea. I want you guys to think back to, oh my goodness, now it's been 3 years ago? The Papa John's incident with the owner, John Schneidner. I think that's how you pronounce it. I might have just butchered it. If I did, forgive me, but when the NFL protest with Colin Kaepernick and NFL players kneeling, when that was going on really, really heavy. I know some people are still protesting, some people aren't. But when in the beginning of it, the pizza sales for Papa John's went down because the president, the owner, and the founder, he was racist. He was making racist comments. He was using the N-words and just saying really inappropriate and hurtful language. And as a result, they were trying to, and their pizza sales went down, the profit sales went down, and whenever you start dealing with people's money, then the board's going to come in and say, hey, we have to do something. So what they decided to do, they went from Papa John's with an apostrophe S showing ownership, right? Showing that John Schneider, was the owner of Papa John's, to rebranding and filing a trademark application for Papa John's without the apostrophe, showing that there were multiple. And then they started doing commercials. The commercials, normally the commercials just had his face on it. But when they were going through this rebranding phase, they did commercials showing the other franchise owners and showing that Papa John's is not just one person. So they had to rebrand in a way to connect with their current audience, because they were losing them because of the messaging that was associated with the previous brand. So that's the third reason that you would want to rebrand, is if your current branding, current messaging is not connecting with your current audience. Rebranding is necessary sometimes. If you're trying to decide whether or not it's time to rebrand, ask yourself these questions. Has your market changed, or has your audience changed? And if so, does your current branding speak to that new audience? Second thing you want to ask yourself is, are you standing out from your competitors? Is your mark saturated? Are there a lot of people using your same or similar mark? Or are you actually infringing on someone's mark and you need to make a change before you get a lawsuit? The third thing is your current mark connecting with your current audience the way you intended to do? Or has anything changed? Is it a PR reason that you might want to change? Or when you started your business, did you just start with the logo? Do you have some sort of logo and branding that you just created real quick on the fly so you can launch your business without actually doing the work to make sure that your brand actually connects with who you wanted to connect with? If you answer yes to any of those questions, I think that you should consider rebranding. And also, if you're thinking about rebranding and you're kind of on the fence and you're like, oh my gosh, should I? I really don't want to, because I took a lot of work to do this and to get to where I am. What I would say to you is embrace the change. Embrace the change, because if you do it right, and by do it right, I mean you actually do the brand work necessary to actually grow a brand, then you're going to connect with people in a way that you never have before. Trust me, I know that's what I'm finding out now with this new brand, with this new rebrand. And then the other thing I would tell you is that branding should always be intentional. I guess I cannot drive this point home enough, that branding should always be intentional. It's not enough for you to go on Fiverr and say, hey, I need a logo. We're not doing that. In 2020 and beyond, we're no longer going to go to Fiverr and say, hey, I need a logo. We're not going to go in Facebook groups and go to our associates and say, hey, do you know who can do a quick logo for me, without actually doing the work and having a brand strategist connect with us and say, hey, who is your audience? What do they like? Where do they shop? All these questions that they're going to ask so they can narrow down who it is you really want to work with. Branding should always be intentional. And if you're thinking about rebranding, or if you've already rebranded, contact my office. Contact my office to learn how we can help you protect that new brand. I want to hear your thoughts. I want you to go to LaConyaMurray.com and let's keep this conversation going. Have you had to rebrand? And if so, why did you rebrand and how did you feel about it? Do you think you need to rebrand? What's stopping you? I don't know. Tell me in the comments. Go to LaConyaMurray.com and tell me in the comments. Answer these questions. Let's keep the conversation going. And until next time, keep building your business, growing your brand, and owning your genius.